Some plants are worth buying at your local plant nursery, but Black-Eyed Susan is not one of them. These seeds are way too easy to start on your own at home. Stay tuned and I'll show you exactly how to do it. Hey guys, it's Anna from Bright Lane Gardens, and today we are doing a super beginner friendly video on a super beginner friendly plant, and that is Black-Eyed Susans. We're starting these guys from seed because they are so insanely easy to start from seed. Black-Eyed Susans are one of my top 3 recommended native plants that beginners should start from seed. They have such a high germination rate, it doesn't take that long for them to germinate, and they establish quickly once these seedlings are ready to be transplanted. Not only that, but the seeds require very minimal prep at the beginning, and it's just so fun and easy to watch these guys grow. So before you go to your plant nursery this spring, start your own Black-Eyed Susan seeds this winter. Trust me, you won't regret it. Black-Eyed Susans are a great addition to your yard. Not only are these a pollinator haven, but they have a long bloom time, they require very minimal care, and they add an amazing pop of color late in the season when pollinators like bees and butterflies are desperate for some late season nectar. These guys are an absolute powerhouse in your garden when it comes to ecological value and aesthetic value, so don't miss this opportunity to add this beautiful plant to your native garden. Starting seeds indoors is a process that sounds more complicated than it really is. I do have a few core products that I have for my indoor grow setup that are relatively inexpensive and they can be reused time and time again, so it's a one-time investment. Let's review a couple of my go-to products now, just so you are set up for success when you start your seeds. First and foremost, we need a reliable container that we can put our seeds in. I love to start with a tray setup. So this is a 4-compartment little seedling container, and these will actually settle right into this 10 by 20 tray here. You can fit 12 of these little compartments in here. They also make these with 6 sections in them. So you can have quite a few plants in a single tray. It just depends on how much space you need and how much space your setup will allow for. To complete your tray setup, you'll also want a humidity dome. This guy sits right on top of your tray, and as the name suggests, it does capture that humidity and helps to maintain the relative humidity of your plants and trap some of that moisture in the soil so that they don't dry out too quickly. If you're starting larger quantities or wanting to start plugs that you will then upplant like we do here at our plant nursery, you might want something a little bit larger and deeper like this plug tray here. This is the same exact size as my other trays, so that humidity dome that I showed you would actually fit right on top of this tray as well. The trays tend to be one of my most common questions I get, so I did link these trays in the description below just so you have a general idea of sizes that I'm using for some of these plants that I'm planting. Next, I have my seedling heat mats. These aren't necessarily required for your seed starting setup, but they can greatly assist in keeping your soil at a temperature where your seeds will easily germinate. They're a low-cost investment, they're a super safe tool to have out in your grow setup, and I highly recommend them, especially if you do different types of seed starting indoors. Next on my list is essential, and that's going to be my seedling mister. Spray bottles can technically work for this. I love the mister because it provides a continuous light spray that does a great job of saturating the entire surface of the soil without pushing that seed further down into the soil. I never recommend watering your seedlings with a watering can or a water bottle because the force of that much volume of water can definitely force that seed further down in the soil. So opt for either a spray bottle or preferably a seedling mister. You're also going to need a seed starting soil mix. I always blend up my own, but you can easily buy a store-bought version of this as well. Later in the video, I will go a little bit further into what we're looking for in our seedling starter mix, but just know you're looking for something that's slightly different than your typical potting mix, and it might be an additional product that you'll need to buy for your setup. Last but not least, we need our Black-Eyed Susan seeds. At the time of recording this video, we are a couple months from selling our own seeds here at Bright Lane Gardens, so if you're watching this video in the future, head over to our website and hopefully we'll have our seeds for sale there. If you're watching this right after I post it, I'm going to recommend a couple brands that we trust in the description below. We've had great success with germinating these brands of seeds, so I can safely recommend these to others. Once your seed starting setup is complete, we can officially move on to step 1, which is preparing our seeds. Black-eyed Susan seeds don't technically require a cold stratification period like other native varieties do. However, a brief cold stratification period can greatly improve your germination rates, and they also help your seeds all germinate at the same time. These are added benefits, especially if you're a beginner or if you are at a plant nursery like we are, and you want all of your seedlings to be about the same size so that they all require the same care. I recommend that you stratify Black-eyed Susan in the fridge for about 10 days. Even a 10-day cold stratification period can really improve your germination rates and can even help these guys germinate a little bit faster as well. I would take this entire envelope as it is, make sure it's sealed and it is opaque, and I would place this usually on an upper shelf in my refrigerator, ensuring that wherever I do place it, it's a nice, clean, dry space to make sure that the seeds do indeed stay dry. And this is called a dry stratification. So Black-eyed Susans are a common drought-tolerant prairie plant. They don't need a ton of moisture in adulthood, and they don't need a cold, moist stratification period when they are still seeds. So dry stratifying right here in the envelope in the fridge for about 10 days will do the trick. Once your seeds are stratified, or if you've opted not to stratify your seeds, we can move on to the next step, which is filling our containers. On my left here, I have our seed starting mix. This is a custom blend that I mix up here for all of our seedlings, and essentially it starts with a general purpose mix. So I actually have Pro Mix as our general purpose mix. It's a really lightweight blend of coco coir and perlite, and from there I just add a little bit of sand and worm castings. You can use whatever variety of seed starting mix that you want, but I do recommend avoiding any seed starting mixes that have fertilizer in them or little fertilizer balls in them. Typically, this is not needed at all, especially with native plants. They've got everything that they need right there in that seed to successfully germinate and get started with life. Oftentimes, additional fertilizers can overwhelm the plant and even burn the plant's roots, especially when it's a teeny tiny little seedling. So avoid any soil mixes that do contain fertilizer, and also opt for a soil mix that has a really fine blend, something that is super lightweight and easy for those delicate roots to find their way through and get established. So you're going to want to opt for something other than a potting mix, something other than your garden soil mix, and something that's specifically intended for delicate roots or seeds to make their way through. Or you can make your own like I did. I'll link my seed starting mix video in the corner here. This is just a breakdown of the ingredients that I use in my custom seed starting mix. We are starting these for our plant nursery, so I am using my deeper plug tray. This is actually a 38 plug tray, so I can fit 38 plants in here, but specifically what I'm looking for is the depth. So this is a lot deeper. This is a lot deeper than that 4-compartment container that I showed you earlier. That 4-compartment container is completely fine if you are starting your seeds and transplanting them this spring. That's going to be plenty of room for you, and you don't need anything deeper. A lot of times when we start our plugs, we'll actually overwinter them for one season and sell them the following season. So growing them in a deeper plug tray like this just gives our plant a lot more room to grow that taproot down, so it's a successful transplant for our customers. In case you're wondering why I'm using a big tray this time around. Since our seeds are going to be surface sown, I am going to fill each of these compartments almost up to the very top. You usually want to leave just like a tiny gap at the top so that when you water, it doesn't overflow over the rim of the container. I have my tray filled with soil, and I'm actually going to take an unusual next step, and that's going to be to go ahead and water my soil. I always like to plant my seedlings in pre-moistened soil. We're going to water again after too, but starting out with that pre-moistened soil really helps you keep seeds where you place them, especially when they're as lightweight as these Black-eyed Susan seeds are. So go ahead and moisten the top of your soil thoroughly. We want that moisture to at least get down an inch or two into the soil. Now that my soil is moist, I'm ready to go ahead and plant my seeds. Black-eyed Susan seeds are very, very small and lightweight. As you could see here, if I took a deep breath and blew, these would literally blow off my hand. So just know that these are really tiny seeds to work with, and because they are so tiny, we only want to surface sow these seeds. I would say one of the biggest beginner mistakes that people run into is actually digging a hole and putting these seeds in a hole and then covering them with soil. These seeds are so lightweight and they need light to germinate. So you want to make sure these are just sitting right on the surface of that soil. I'm literally just going to take these two fingers and rub them together, almost like you were doing it with a pinch of salt. And we're going to just sprinkle 2 to 3 seeds in each of these compartments. Know that if you get more than 3 seeds in each compartment, it's not a big deal. We can come back through and thin these seedlings later, but you want to get 2 or 3 seeds in each compartment to make sure that you have at least one that's going to successfully germinate. Once all our seeds are planted, we're going to go ahead and water again. Do not be afraid of overwatering these right now. We want to make sure that these get a nice moist start. So I'm going to go ahead and aim for that top 2 inches of soil again, and I'm going to soak them with my mister. Because so many seedlings look very similar when they first start to sprout, we are going to label this tray. I like to also include the date that I planted them so I have a better idea of when I should be expecting those to germinate. And last, we're going to add our humidity dome to trap in some of that moisture. Our tray is ready to be placed on my growing shelf. A couple notes about this location. This is my grow setup here. This is actually a south-facing window, but since we live in Michigan and it's obviously winter time out, we don't have nearly enough natural light to make these seedlings successfully grow. So I do have some added artificial lighting. Artificial lighting for indoor plants is something I could probably do a totally separate video on, but my basic recommendations are, it depends on what you are looking for as a gardener. If this is your first year and you just want a super basic setup, you can't get any more cost effective than LED bulbs. You have LED bulbs, which is like this guy here, or there are also LED panels that can cover a larger area and are sometimes a little bit easier for seedlings. But if you're going for beginner level, cost effective, LEDs are definitely the way to go. If you have a little bit more of an advanced setup and you're looking for something a little bit more serious, CFL bulbs is probably my next recommendation. That would be something like that guy there. Your CFL bulbs are not going to be as energy efficient or as cost effective as your LED bulbs, but in my opinion, they offer a little bit more powerful source of light that tends to bring a little bit more success to my setup. From there, you can go pretty crazy with the lighting setups. You can easily drop several $100s on these. So it's up to you and what you're looking for your own budget and your own setup. But some form of supplementary light is going to be needed if you're trying to start seedlings indoors in an area like this. I do have my tray placed on a heating mat. And like I said, that does tend to help warm up that soil and speed up that germination. Your cold stratification can also help speed up your germination. So on average, we always like to say 7 to 14 days for your black-eyed Susan seeds to germinate. But if you have cold stratified your seeds, and if you do have an ideal temperature using a seedling heat mat or an external heat source, it's super likely that you're actually going to start to see those sprout up in 5 to 7 days, which is really exciting considering how long you have to wait for some of these native plants to germinate. This is an example of a previous batch of black-eyed Susans that I started about a week ago. These were started on the 20th and today is the 28th. So these are 8-day-old seedlings. And I would say I started to see some green pop out of the soil on probably day 4. These were cold stratified, dry stratified in the fridge for about 12 days before I pulled them out. And they were on a seedling heat mat. So that's the germination rate I got with a seedling heat mat and with that cold stratification period. As you can see, they're just barely above the surface, and I have multiple plants per cubicle, which is exactly what I want to see. As these plants do grow up and get taller, I'll likely go in there and thin them out to make sure that the top 1 or 2 plants that I leave in there have the best chance at survival. As your seedlings grow, make sure that you are keeping that soil consistently moist. Keep using that humidity dome until they're probably touching the bottom of that, and then you can kind of pull that off and water from the bottom. Once you get root structure in the soil, you'll notice the soil doesn't dry out as quickly, so your maintenance tasks actually will reduce as that seedling grows into that compartment there. It's currently the end of January. It's a perfect time to start your black-eyed Susans because because then you'll have a nice robust seedling by the time May comes around, or whatever month is appropriate for transplanting in your area. Here in Michigan, we probably wouldn't plan on sticking this guy outside until after Memorial Day. That tends to be our safe planting day when the soil has warmed up enough and when our risk of late frost has passed. Black-eyed Susans establish quickly, and in some cases you might even get your first few blooms this year, which is a wonderful treat. Typically these guys will bloom later in the year, around August here in Michigan, and they add a really nice pop of color to late season landscapes. If you don't get a flower this year, don't fret. That plant is just focusing on establishing its roots, and you will definitely see some blooms next year. Black-eyed Susans are relatively successful at self-seeding, but they also spread via rhizomes under the soil, so you'll notice your patch steadily grow year after year. These are excellent options for drier landscapes, meadow landscapes, prairie landscapes, anywhere that you have a larger area and want a plant to quickly establish, but maybe don't have any irrigation, or if it's up on a hill and gets a lot of full sun. Black-eyed Susans are a great flower option for those landscaped areas. I'll follow up in the spring with an update on how some of our seedlings are doing, but in the meantime, our job here is done today. If you have any questions for me on any of my native plant seed starting efforts, please leave them in the comment section below. We always love to hear from you guys. Thank you so much for taking the time to spend on our channel today. It seriously helps out small businesses like ours so much. I hope to catch you next time. Bye-bye.